Hello everyone, this is part 2 of that battle. So, if you're watching, if you're a guy, get your tits out. If you're a woman, get your pricks out. And let's get into this video.
He then placed slingers in commanding positions to cover the withdrawal. The 9th was pursued by the Pompeian missiles and light infantry, who pushed the screens into the trenches to cross them. Caesar, fearing a rout, ordered Antony, commander of the 9th, to charge the Pompeians. In a brilliant display of
I just want to say, Mark Antony is the only name that somebody could be named Mark Antony today, or Antony, and you'd be like, yeah. But if somebody was named Caesar, you'd be like, what? Didn't we get rid of those names? Unless you're naming a cat or a dog Caesar. I don't see the name. Even Pompey. Yeah. Think of all those old names. How many of them... Oh, I missed him. How many of them still exist?
discipline, the 9th immediately turned, flung their javelins, and charged back up the slope. The Pompeians, only being lightly armed, retreated, and the 9th was able to withdraw in good order. Soon after, Caesar's defences were complete. It was now late June. Due to his men's greater experience and discipline, he now had Pompey's force pinned against the sea. This was a great achievement. A smaller, less supplied force had never done this before against superior numbers. Though low on grain, Caesar did manage to level the playing field by having control of all the sources of fresh water in the area. Pompey was now forced to dig wells and rely on supplies from the sea. Furthermore, Caesar could now send his men further afield to gather supplies without fear of harassment. Pompey, however, was a skilled general and had his own strategies to keep Caesar under pressure, sending missile units to harass Caesar's lines at night, targeting the light of their campfires. He also attempted to bring his cavalry into play, which, stuck behind the fortifications, had done little so far. Boarding them onto ships, he sent them up the coast to Dyrrhachium. From here, they would be free from the confines of the fortifications and could forage without putting a burden on Pompey's supplies, as well as attack Caesar's line from the rear. Around this same time, in early July, Caesar received word that there were citizens of Dyrrhachium who were willing to be bribed and give him the town. Looking to capitalize, Caesar went to the town with a small armed escort, leaving Publius Cornelius Sulla in charge. However, when he reached the outskirts of the city, he was attacked by the Pompeian cavalry, who attempted to surround Caesar, and he only just managed...
Sorry, I knocked my microphone off the table.
Managed to cut his way out with his men and survive the ambush. While Caesar was away from the main line, Pompey had also launched 3 simultaneous offensives on the fortifications. He ordered 4 legions to concentrate on a point in the center of the line, and 1 legion each to attack 2 other points in the line. The point the 4 legions were attacking was atop a hill and well fortified, but only defended by 500 men of the 6th Legion. The cohort was hard pressed, thousands of missiles being fired into their position, but the men held on doggedly, confident that reinforcements would be arriving soon. They were correct. Quickly as he could, Sulla had marched 2 legions to their relief, and upon seeing this new force, the Pompeians retreated. According to Caesar, every man of this unit suffered some kind of injury. The other 2 attacks had also been repelled, one by 3 cohorts and another by Caesar's German auxiliaries, who sallied out, taking heavy losses. In total, Caesar claimed that the Pompeians lost 2,000 men in these battles, and the Caesarians just 20. It is likely that the citizens of Dyrrhachium were Pompey's agents who had lured Caesar into a trap. Pompey was proving a worthy and cunning enemy, but Caesar's veterans had proved their mettle. Bolstered.
The only difference that I'm seeing right now is Caesar and Pompey are both skilled, but I think it just comes down to Caesar having the better unit, the better military. That's with him. They are more capable. I'm going to sneeze again, so I'm going to go ahead and.
By the confidence of their victories, Caesar would march his army out in battle formation to offer battle to Pompey as a sign of strength. Pompey also drew his army up for battle so as not to lose face, but refused to engage. He would need to orchestrate a situation where he would have overwhelming numbers in order to contend with Caesar's veterans. Longinus and Sabinus had been successful in taking Aetolia and had taken all the towns between Epirus and Corinth. They now planned to push past the Isthmus of Corinth and into the Peloponnese, but found their path blocked by a Pompeian force. Nonetheless, their success was crucial in giving Caesar an abundance of supplies from these new Greek territories. With more successes under his belt, Caesar again sent a peace delegation, this time to Scipio, hoping to convince the latter to talk to Pompey. But even though Scipio at first listened with interest, his officers were having none of it. Meanwhile at Dyrrhachium, Caesar fortified the two approaches to the town, cutting the Pompeian cavalry in the area off from the supplies there. With the cavalry now unable to sustain themselves, Pompey withdrew them by sea back to his entrenchments. But Pompey's food was still running low, and he knew he would have to soon force a breakout. To try and achieve this, Pompey's men occupied the original fortifications of the 9th, which were between the two armies' fortifications, and expanded on them, making a second, larger camp that encompassed the first. He also added a long wall from the camp to a nearby river to secure a water supply. This would act as a forward base from where Pompey could strike. Pompey suddenly had a stroke of luck when two Gallic officers who served Caesar during the Gallic Wars deserted. They had detailed intel about Caesar's defences and knew where the weak points were, and they now passed all this information to Pompey.
I'm not trusting them.
At the southern end of Caesar's defences, where the fortifications met the coast, Caesar's 9th Legion was stationed under Marcellinus. After having been forced to withdraw from their original camp, they had constructed a second camp and fortifications that stretched to the coast. Behind this, they had constructed a second line of defences facing south, preventing Pompey landing troops behind and attacking their rear. To complete the defences, an extra line of defences would need to be made between the two walls, linking them together and blocking any attack from the sea. But these defences were incomplete. Pompey formulated his plan. He would attack their inner wall with his legions, landing light infantry and missile troops to the south to attack the outer wall, while even more troops would be landed between the two walls. Doing so, he would attack the 9th from 3 sides.
Okay.
This took a lot of careful planning and timing, and he withdrew his legions from the 9th's old fort and behind his own lines to coordinate. After a couple of days of preparation, he was ready. He moved 60 cohorts of legionaries, around 30,000 men, to attack Caesar's inner fortifications, while the light infantry was moved by boat behind the outer wall. As they began their attack, more men were simultaneously landed at the gap between the entrenchments. There were only 2 cohorts of the 9th present at the time, the rest still being in camp. These 1,000 men now found themselves under furious attack from 3 sides by overwhelming numbers. Desperately, they tried to form a line and sent word to Marcellinus for help, but the numbers were too much and the men broke and ran. As they did, they ran into the reinforcing cohorts sent by Marcellinus, causing chaos in the narrow gap between the walls. The Pompeians closed in on Marcellinus's camp, which was now only defended by a couple of cohorts. Luckily, Antony, who was close at hand, managed to organize 6,000 men and came to their aid, stopping the Pompeian advance. He was soon joined by Caesar, alerted by smoke signals, and another 6,500 men. Both forces now had most of their men committed to this part of the line. While Pompey's main force had been pushing into the 9th's camp, more men had already begun construction of a fort outside of Caesar's fortifications to the south. The blockade had been broken. Caesar ordered his men to begin construction of a trench, plugging the gap between the two walls. While this was being done, Caesar's scouts spotted a Pompeian legion moving back into the 9th Legion's old fort. If Pompey took this fort, he would be able to make a link between his new fort in the south and his old fortifications. Caesar was determined to stop this from happening. Gathering around 17,000 men and leaving 1,000 to continue entrenching, Caesar took a circuitous route, concealing his force as long as possible, and then launched the attack. His left wing, where Caesar himself was, pushed into the fort, forcing the Pompeian legion back into the inner camp. Caesar's right wing, however, had stumbled across the Pompeian entrenchments that led to the river. Thinking these were part of the fort, they followed them, looking for a gate through. When they reached the river and realized their mistake, they managed to break down points in the defenses, breaking through, followed by the cavalry, but they had wasted precious time. Pompey had seen what was happening and sent all his heavy infantry, 25,000 men, to assist the legion in the fort. The cavalry rode ahead of the legions and fell upon the Caesarian cavalry of the right flank, routing them almost instantly.
Wow.
The infantry around them, seeing their comrades fleeing and Pompey's men closing in, also ran. The narrow passages they had made through the entrenchments became clogged, and some men took to jumping from the ramparts into the ditches to try and escape. Many were trampled to death. Inside the fort itself, Pompey's legion was fighting back with renewed courage. Caesar's left, afraid that they were about to be trapped inside of the narrow confines of the fort, also began to break, retreating through the gate. Caesar tried to stop the rout, grabbing onto fleeing standard bearers and ordering them to stand their ground. One, overcome by panic, even tried to stab Caesar, but he was saved by his bodyguards.
Oh.
Caesar's entire force that had been
Is that what we like to call foreshadowing?
committed to the attack had retreated, broken. But Pompey, fearing Caesar had laid a trap, did not pursue, and the narrow breaches in the defences stopped his cavalry pursuing further. If he had, he may well have been able to destroy Caesar's army. In total, Caesar gives his dead as being 32 officers, centurions and tribunes, almost 1,000 legionnaires and 200 horsemen. He had also lost many men as prisoners, perhaps as many as 1,000. On the orders of Labienus, all of these men were killed. Pompey was hailed as Imperator, but as a sign of respect, refused the symbolic bay leaves that went with the title, due to his victory being over fellow Romans. Caesar, after having committed almost 3 months to the battle, pulled away his full force from Dyrrhachium, defeated. The Pompeians took this as a full retreat, and word was sent to Eastern kings that the war was already won. However, Pompey had failed to strike a killing blow. He had done well to break out of Caesar's encirclement, but had missed the opportunity to use his overwhelming numbers.
As long as Caesar's alive, you didn't win.
Caesar was a dangerous enemy and could not be left any space to regroup.
Exactly.
Nonetheless, Caesar was able to carry out an ordered withdrawal of his army with only light harassment from Pompey's forces, pulling back to Apollonia. As he did so, he comforted his men, saying that just as Gergovia had preceded Alesia, so too would this defeat at Dyrrhachium be followed by a far greater victory. Once again, shout out to Backplay.
It was good. I think this is like one of the first times where Caesar in open battle lost, which is interesting. So I'm gonna end this video here. Man, I couldn't stop sneezing. Oh, so heartburn. Like and subscribe. Heartburn again. Like and subscribe, or don't, and Santa won't come visit me. You don't want that to happen. I've always wanted that G.I. Joe.